So, hello everyone. Welcome to week 6, lecture 6. We are going to start with looking at assignment 5, which I posted today and will be due next week. I thought 1 week should be enough for this assignment as I feel it's quite straightforward. I saw that only one person has turned in assignment 4, so I'm guessing a lot of people are having trouble with dictionaries. So stay back after class if you're having trouble with assignment 4, since it's supposed to be due today, unless you have any roadblocks, right? So in terms of assignment 3, we have pretty good participation. I'll still allow you to turn it in, but we might not give you full credit, all right? But we'll still correct it for you. And then assignment 2 has had pretty good submission. So this is assignment 5. Let's look at it. All right. So this week we're going to try something different. So you just take this document and you complete the exercises below. Okay. Sorry, did someone say something? I think my speaker was muted before, so I apologize for that. Also, if you're not asking a question, please put yourself on mute. Okay, so this is what we're going to be doing. Take a copy of this document and complete the exercise below. Okay, so we did lists last lecture, if you remember, right? So given a list, so this is a list, display it in backward order. So what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to create this variable and then display it like this. So a hint I will give you here is the best friend you'll have here is a website I have mentioned before called W3 Schools. Okay. So where you want to go in this is you want to go to references. Okay. Um, where's Python? Okay, let's search W3 Schools Python. Okay, so we're doing lists, right? So we go to lists and just try to have a look around over here. You'll get information that I provided to you in the lectures, and you'll also get more information, more in-depth knowledge about the operators and their limits and so on. So I would recommend going to W3 Schools and doing your own research. Okay. So that will help you in answering some of these questions. Okay, is that clear? So basically, you just want to go through each of these questions, and whatever they're asking you to do, you have to do to the variable that's given to you. Okay. So the only rule here is that you can't redefine the variable itself. Like you can't simply say my list equals and then this right over here, right? That's kind of not what we want. We want you to take the variable my list and then add this to it, right? That's what we want. And in the first one, we want you to take this variable my list, and then reverse that list and display it. We don't want you to redefine it. So are we clear on what we're supposed to do for this assignment? You have to transform the list that is given to you in order to create a new list. That is your task. All right, so let's move on. It looks like nobody has any questions. Okay. Um, Oh, sorry. So today we're going to be starting with loops. All right, so loops, iterables, and iterators. So what is a loop? A loop allows certain portions of the code to execute a number of times. This repeated execution of a set of statements is called iteration. Okay. So one iteration is one execution of this set of statements. Okay. So multiple iterations refers to multiple of these executions being done. Does that make sense? It will make more sense as we go on. So also loops enable iteration on Python objects that are capable of returning more than one member at a time. So who can tell me about Python objects or data that can return more than one member? What kind of data has more than one member? Any guesses? A list, yes, a list is a good example. Basically any of our collective data types that we learned about, data structures, that is, right? So arrays, lists, dictionaries, tuples, even strings, because strings are a collection of characters, as we learned, right? So how do we use a loop? So the basic way that we'll do it is, for example, let's say we start with a for loop. This is one of the two types of loops. Sorry. So for, right? So in here, okay, if you're not asking a question, please put yourself on mute. Okay, so first you write for, then inside a bracket, you will put a condition. This condition, when true, right? It will go inside this loop and repeat whatever is inside. So let's look at an example. So over here, we have a list first, right? So what is the name of the list? Student names list, right? So it has 4 students' names. So now what happens? For student name in student names list, print student name. This is how we're looping. So let's try to write this code in PyCharm and see what it's trying to do. Okay. All right. So let's create a list. Let's put some fruits in here. Okay. Apple, banana, mango, let's say. Okay. So now what I want to do is, for every word in this list, I want to say I ate that. So for example, I want to say I ate apple, I ate banana, I ate mango. I want 3 separate sentences like that. So what is the usual way we would do this? What what way do we currently know to do this? Anyone? How do we access something inside a list?
Should we put it in the chat?
Sorry,
We put it in the chat.
I can't hear you. Sorry.
You asked a question. Said we respond in the chat.
Right. So what we can do is, sorry, my throat's acting up a little bit. So what we can do here is we can use the square brackets, right? Oh, it's not typing. Okay. So we use the square brackets, right? So if we want to have apple, we use this, right? And if I want to output I ate apple, I will do I ate and then plus this, right? So this is the current way we know how we can print this, right? And if we want to do it for all three, we'll have to write it 3 times just with the correct indexes, right? This is how we would do it, right? But now imagine this list has 100 fruits. This is not practical anymore then, right? This is not really useful anymore. So what we can do is when we have a data structure like a list, we can take these members inside this list one at a time. So how we do this, how we do that is we do for, right? Then we'll make up a new variable name. So in this case, fruit seems very apt. So we'll use for fruit in my list. Okay. So what this does is it creates a new variable fruit, right? That will represent a data member inside this list. And it will do this one at a time. So inside this list, what we can do is print I ate, then plus, and then fruit. And this will give us the same answer, right? So now let's look at what exactly this is doing by using the dry runs I like to do, right? So let's do it. So what is our list? Oh, my list, right? So it is a list which has 3 things in it. It has apple, banana, and mango. I'm just going to write the first words, but you can assume that these are the actual strings, okay? So now this is the first line done, right? So now let's look at the second line. So the second line creates a new variable called fruit, right? And fruit is in my list. So what it does is we have indexes 0, 1, 2. Excuse me. So 0, 1, 2, right? So the fruit variable will take the first member inside the list, apple, right? And take that as its value. So then it goes inside the loop and it says, oh, print I ate fruit. So in the output, it writes I ate apple because fruit is apple, right? So now what happens in a loop is when we usually see pieces of code until now, they go from top to bottom, right? But now in the loop, what happens is once you reach the end of this indented part, it will go back up. Okay. It went back up and it will see, okay, is there more things left inside the list? Yes, we are at 0 and 1 still has something inside it, right? It has banana. So now it goes ahead in the list and now fruit will have banana, right? We're back in line 2 and now fruit becomes banana. Now it comes back to line 3 and it says I ate banana. Then it will go back up go further in the list, change the value of fruit to mango, right? Go back inside the loop, and so on and so forth, right? And then finally, when the list ends, it will say, okay, the list has ended. I will exit the loop now, and it goes to line 4. And in this case, we don't really have a line 4, so the code exits, right? So does that make sense to everyone, how a loop works? Okay. So this is the only way currently we know that will let the code flow from down to up instead of going from up to down as it normally does. Okay. So let me clear all of this. What if we wrote fruits instead of fruit? Well, that would work too. It's just a confusing variable name, right? Because it still represents the same thing, but it just says fruits where it's singular, so it would just kind of annoy me, but like it's not wrong. It's just a variable name. Okay, cool. So let's go back to the presentation. Hmm. Seem to not be getting some chat. Um, what if you want to print only I ate mango? Okay, so let's go back to the pie chart. So if you want to modify the current code to do this, what I would do is, so let's make this back to fruit. All right. So inside the loop, we can also have an if statement, right? So we can check if fruit is mango, only then print. Let's say, what was it? I ate. uh, So now if you run this code, it will only say I ate mango, even though it goes through the entire list because it also checks the if statement. That answer your question? Or you could simply just do, let's say we comment this out. Okay. You could also just do this print I ate. Right, this would also do the same thing, but this you can only do if you already know the index of the fruit, right? But if this is somehow random or you don't know the order, then you would have to create a check like this if statement I did in the commented code, right? That makes sense. And when you write this hash, everything else is ignored. So just in case you were wondering why it wasn't printed twice, all of this code is ignored because of the hash in the beginning. Okay, so let's go back to the presentation now. Okay, so as we can see in this example, they've printed out the student list one by one, right? So similar to what we did, kind of less complex, but you get the idea. So for a loop again, we can also do this for a string, right? So if we have a string, we can print each character in it. So let's try to see this as well. So let's make this my fruit. Okay, let's remove all of this and just say mango. Okay, so now what we do is, now what we want to do is we want to display each character in this word. Okay, that's what we're trying to do. So what we'll do is for let's say what do we call it, character in my fruit, and then print character. Okay, so now when we run this, we get each character one by one. So this does the same thing. It kind of just treats this as a list of characters and then does the exact same looping thing we did last time, right? So does anybody have any doubts here? Okay, so let's go back to the presentation. So now we have the while loop. Okay. Um, okay, so while loop is used to execute a set of statements or iterate an object until the statement in the while statement is, until the condition in while statement is true. Wait, it should be false. Okay, this should say false over here. Let me just cross this out. Um, false. Okay. So this while condition, as long as this condition is true, it will keep iterating this object. Oh wait, then it was actually right. Sorry, my bad. So the while condition, this must be true, and then whatever is inside that while condition will keep running, and then as soon as it becomes false, it will stop. So this sounds kind of crazy. I'm probably sounding kind of crazy right now. So let's look at an example, right? You're like, what do you mean it will become false, right? How will it become false? So let's see. Um, okay, so what do we want to loop through? Hmm. I'm trying to think of something interesting. So let's say I want to make a pattern that kind of looks like this, right? So, okay. So I just want to make like 1 star, then 2 star, 3 star, and print it like in 5 lines like this, right? So one way would just be to like just write print commands, right? But like that's boring. Who wants to do that? So let's try to do a while loop. So let's see. While. Okay. So first step is we'll create a number and put it as 0, right? Now we want 5 rows, right? So we'll create another number, let's call it j, and we'll set it as 5. Okay. Now we'll say while I is less than j, print, or actually, um, now in here we have to print 1 star if the number I is 1, 2 stars if the number I is 2, and so on, right? That is the idea. So for that, we'll need to create another loop. So we look at that idea later. So let's change what we want a little bit, right? So for now, let's just say I want 5 stars, right? One after the other. This is what we want to make. Okay. So we'll just do print star. Okay. And then we'll say I plus equals 1. Okay. So now before I run this code, let's try to see what I've done over here, right? Because this code kind of looks, it's small, but it looks scary, right? So let's see what I've done. So first I've created a variable called I, right? Given it the value 0. Then I've given a variable j, given it the value 5. Okay. Now we go to line 3. So what it does in the while loop is it will keep doing what is inside until this statement is true. So is I less than j? Well, is 0 less than 5? Yes, 0 is less than 5. So in the output window, we have print star. So we print star, right? Then we have I plus equals 1. So I becomes 1, right? Now, because this is a loop, it goes back up and it says, oh, let's check again. Is this true? I is less than j. 1 is less than 5. Yes, this is true. So it will go inside the loop again, print out the star, increase the value of I by 1. We go back up the loop. I is less than j. We print out another star. We increase the value by 1. Go back up. I is less than j. Print out another star. Increase the value by 1. Go back up. 4 is less than 5. Another star. Increase the value by 1. Go back up. So now this time when we come up, is I less than j? No. So it will exit the loop. And as we have no code after the loop, it will exit the code. Okay. So let's run this and see if our output matches and we have the same output. So does it make sense how this while loop works? It will keep looping. It will keep running that piece of code until the condition is true. And as soon as it is false, it will exit the loop. Okay. So now let's try to make what I was trying to show earlier, right? So now what we're trying to make is we want 1 star, then we want 2 stars, then we want 3 stars, then we want 4, then we want 5, right? So this is kind of the pattern we want. I excuse how my stars look, but this is kind of what we want, right? So for this, what we'll do is we'll put a loop inside the loop. So the loop only goes in the indented part. Correct. So it is kind of like the if statements we learned earlier, right? In the if statement, it will execute what is inside if the statement is true. The only difference is it will keep executing what is inside until this is true, right? That is the only statement between the only difference between a while and an if statement. The if statement only executes once, while this will keep executing until it becomes false. Okay. So let's clear some of this. All right. So now we want to make this pattern, right? So what can we do? So right now we're just getting one star at a time. We do have the information, right? I tells us one less than the number of stars we have to print in that line, right? We can already do that with I. So what we can do is we can just create another loop inside. So let's make another variable. Let's call this 0. Oh, sorry, let's call this k and give it the value 0. And we'll loop this until it reaches I. Sorry, yes, until it reaches I. So we'll do while k is less than I. Okay. So now, and k plus equals 1. And when we're outside in this loop, then we do I plus equals 1. Okay. So let's try to run this. Okay. Oh, this will still go into a new line. How do we fix that? Okay, so again, what we can do is we can go to W3 schools. Again, I am, even though I've been coding for 5 or 6 years, I still like to simply just go to W3 schools and just look it up, right? So what we can do is we can go to loops. So let's look at loops, right? So we have a lot of examples over here, right? But let's say I want to search. So let's say I want to do print statement without new line Python. This is something that I would search, right? So you need to add an extra argument. Okay. Okay, so this is a website I don't even know, but as you can see, end is equal to this. So this is apparently something that will help us. So let's try it out. So I'll copy this. Oh, let's go back to PyCharm and put it here. Okay, so let's try to run this. Okay, now we got it all in one line, right? So this is also not what we want. So, what can we do? Well, let's just make an empty print statement once we're done with that loop. So when we do this, oh, now we can see it's kind of what we want, but still not quite there, right? So let's do one last bit of code over here, and now we should be good. Okay, so we have our final result. So now you must be thinking this will all happen very quickly, right? So now we're going to do another dry run. So let's try to see what we've done over here. Okay, so first we have in the first line I equals 0, right? So let's make a variable and putting the value 0 in here, right? Then we go to line 2, we're making variable j, put the value 5 in there. Okay, now we go to line 3, it says while I is less than j. So we just learned it is like an if statement, it will keep repeating going inside until it is true, right? So is I less than j? Well, yeah, 0 is less than 5, right? So it goes to line 4 and creates a new variable called k and gives it the value 0, right? Now we go to line 5. Now we have another while loop. And as we learned, this is like an if statement. So we can nest these, right? So we just go further in if it is true, right? So while k is less than equal to 1, so is 0 less than equal to 0? Yes, right? So we print star. So we have an output and we print star. So this piece of code that I had here, what this does is it simply just lets the code not escape into the new line, right? So it will make sure that the next time I write a print statement, it will come in the same line as the last print statement. Does that make sense? Because we want our stars to be in one line, right? For that line, that particular line. So, okay, so then we go to line 7, right? We have k plus equals 1. So k becomes 1, right? Then we go back up the loop, right? Because the indented portion for this while loop is done, right? This is the indented part. So now we're checking again. Is k less than equal to 1? Well, is 1 less than equal to 0? No. So we exit the loop. Where is the exit for the loop? Line 8, right? Because that is where we are on the same line as the while loop, right? So we come to line 8. And this is simply an empty print statement to go into the next line in our output, right? Because in the last line we have stopped that from happening, because in the same line we want like multiple stars, right? So that is simply a workaround I've created. I'm sure there's another way to do this, an easier way, and I'm sure one of you will find it, right? So then we go to line number 9. I plus equals 1, so I becomes 1. Then we go back up the loop. What do we have? Is I less than j? Well, 1 is less than 5, right? So we go inside the loop back again. So k is 0. So k is 0 again. Then we go into the loop again, and it will keep going like this. And then we'll have 2 stars here. Then we'll have 3 stars here, and so on and so forth. So you can, kind of, when I put this recording on, you can kind of pause this. You can try to do your own dry run and try to make sense of this, right? But do you have any doubts at the moment? Does this double loop make sense? Please, can you recap? Yes. So what we're trying to do is, right, we have, what I said was a while loop is basically like an if statement, right? It is basically the same as an if statement, but the difference is it will keep executing what is inside it until that if statement, sorry, until that bracketed statement is false. And as in if statements, we can nest these, right? So we can have them one inside the other. And when we have it like that, it will just follow the same rules, right? It will execute what is inside that particular loop, and it will keep executing what is inside that loop until it becomes false. And if it never becomes false, it actually stays stuck in there and it can become an infinite loop. And that is what we call an infinite loop, right? Must have heard that at some point. So does that make sense? Like you can kind of think of it like an if statement, but it keeps going until you are able to make it false. Okay, so I seem to be missing some messages. I don't know why. Okay, I think somebody had their hand raised. Yes, Atus, say you can go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to ask one thing.
Okay.
From online number 6, you said print, and there was only one star in the first brackets before the word end.
Mm-hmm.
And then down there, after when you run the code, it brings one to close to 5 lines of stars. The other one have 1 star, 2 stars, 3 stars. Does this come because it's showing maybe the number of times the loop did itself, or I don't understand why we're having different lines with different number of stars?
Yes. So the idea is that I want this pattern, right? This is what we started with, right? So to do that, we're using a print statement which only prints one star at a time. And as we know, a normal print statement will go into a new line straight after that, right? It will go into the next line and start printing in that the next time you call it. But in this print statement, I've added this qualifier at the end. So what this end keyword does is it will make this the end instead of the new line. So it won't go into the next line for the next print statement. It will stay there. And then when you're done looping through that number, right? So the first line, the number is 1. So it loops through this one time, right? And then it goes here. And this empty print statement does go to the new line because it does not have this end qualifier, right? So this goes to the new line every time after this ends, right? But this print statement is executed every time like this, right? So we're going one at a time over here. So this qualifier basically helps us to not go into the new line with the print statement. Was that your question?
Yeah, I wanted to be clear on that one.
Okay. Yeah, so that's basically what we're doing here. Just using the end keyword to make sure we're not going into the new line with the print statement. It just stays there. Can we use /n to insert a new line instead of using print? So yeah, so if in this end, right, you use this, for example, it will go into the new line. So if you'll see here, now we have only one star at a time, right? So one, then we have the print statement, the empty print statement, then we have two, then we have the empty print, then we have three, then the empty print statement. But this is the same as writing just print. So if you want to do this, I would just write print, right? Same answer. Does that answer your question? Okay, so let's go back to our presentation. Right. So in a while condition, what is necessary is any code, right, that you want to be executed again and again, and an operation that eventually turns this condition to false. So let's go back to our code. Who will tell me what operation am I performing to make sure that my while loops eventually turn false and I don't go into an infinite loop? Where am I making sure of that?
Is line 7.
Line 7, correct. So this line 7 makes sure that line 5 eventually becomes false, right? And line 9 ensures that line 3 eventually becomes false. Does that make sense? Why? Because we are saying that I is less than j, and initially it is less than j, but we keep increasing it by 1. So after 5 runs through this code, it has to become greater than j, right? That is the idea of putting this I plus equals 1 over here. Same for k. K is eventually less than equal to 1 because we set it as 0, but we eventually want it to become false, so we keep increasing it by 1. And we're increasing it by 1 before we're increasing I by 1, right? This loop will keep running for each I, right? So technically you could say that this loop runs more times than this entire loop will, if that makes sense. But yeah, so we have another question in chat. It answers my question, but it doesn't print. Okay. So you wanted to print everything in one line? Is that what you want? Ikena?
No, no, I don't want to print everything in one line. I just wanted to print the same thing you print, something like triangle that you printed before, using slash slash new slash n.
Or you want like a pyramid type of a thing, maybe? Something like that.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, so let's do one thing. I'll let you have a go at it and let me know how it goes. Okay, sounds good. Fair enough.
I didn't get you, sorry.
I was just saying I will let you have a go at it, let you try it first, right?
Okay.
And then
Okay.
if you can't do it, let's have a discussion. And if you are able to do it, maybe someone wants to see it in class, right?
Okay.
So let's go back to our presentation for now. All right. So we learned that we need an operation that will eventually make our condition false. Otherwise, we'll be in an infinite loop. So let's take a look at what an infinite loop looks like just for fun, right? Okay, so how do we create an infinite loop? Well, that's easy. You just don't do anything inside. You just keep printing y or something, right? And because 0 is less than 5, this will just stay true and it will just keep printing y. So if you want to see this in action, there we go. It will just keep printing y. And unless you press the red button over here, it will just keep going. So I would say just press the red button eventually. Okay, so let's go back to the presentation. Oh, my battery is low. 1 second. There we go. Okay, so while requires index to iterate through the members of objects, while for doesn't. Okay, I do not understand what my former colleague wanted to say there. Sorry. um, Nested loops. It is possible to nest loops. So this is what I was just talking about. You can even put a for loop inside a while loop or a while loop inside a for loop and mix and match like that. You'll find some opportunity maybe to be able to do that later. But yeah, you can nest loops just as you were nesting if statements. You can even nest if statements inside loops and then loops inside if statements and so on. So you can just really create any uh, combination, right? Okay, so right, so this will kind of this example is actually really good to show you nested loops. So I'm going to go to PyCharm and show you guys again. All right, so let's say we have rows. Let's say we have 3 variables, right? Let's say x. Let's make y equals 10. Let's make z equals 0. And then, I don't know, w equals 10 again. Um, Actually, let's just keep it like this for now. Let's make while x is less than y, right? Print, let's say row, and then plus string, and we want to convert the number to a string, let's say, right? This is what I want to do, and then I want to do x plus equals 1, right? So what this will do is it will simply just give me 9 rows, and it will label each row from row 0 to row 9, right? Now what we can do is inside, once we have announced that we're inside this row, let's create another variable, call it z equals 0, right? And like last time, we loop it until it reaches this smaller variable that we were comparing earlier, right? So we'll take z less than x, sorry, less than equal to x, right? And then we just print, let's say, column, uh, and then plus string set. Okay, let's say we're doing this. And then we increase it by 1 because we want it to eventually become false, right? And let's just add the end equals qualifier as well. So what this will do is it will keep everything in one line, right? Oh, if we're increasing x over here, we can make this just less than. And then, so basically what we're doing is that in each row, there's just as many columns as there was, if there's one more column than there are the row number, right? Okay, that's the basic idea. So let's remove this qualifier. Actually, we don't really need it. Let's run it. Okay, so let's see what it gives us, right? So over here we have, so in row 0, we just have column 0. Then in row 1, we have column 0, column 1. Then in row 2, we have column 0, 1, 2. Row 3, we have 0, 1, 2, 3. 4, we have 0 to 4, and so on, right? So this kind of gives you an idea of how the loop is running and how kind of the flow goes, right? So I would recommend you to kind of do this example yourself at home. Try to recreate what I've done here. I would say loops are very, very important, and uh, I highly recommend doing some exercises yourself. Let's go back to the presentation. All right, so we have iterable functions. So for I in range, this we can print. So what does the range variable do? Well, it has 3 arguments, right? The first argument is optional, that is the start, right? So where do we want to start from? Why is it optional? Because it will automatically start from 0, okay? And then the second is mandatory. This is till where do you want your range to be. So if you don't specify the first one and then inside the bracket you just say 5, right? It will go till 4, from 0 till 4, right? It will take one less than the number you specify, right? So 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then the third argument is the step. This is how much you want to increase, and default value is 1. It will go 0, 1, 2, 3, 4 if you don't specify it. But for example, if we had 5 comma, let's say, okay, so if you want to do the third argument, the first argument is necessary, right? Because if you put only 2 arguments, it will think that you put the first 2 arguments and not the last 2. Okay, so let's see an example of this. All right, so for I in range 5, okay, we print I. So what this will do is it will give us values from 0 to 4. Okay. Now, if we give it another argument, let's say we want to start from 2 and then we want to go till 4, right? So if I do 2 comma 5, it will do just that, right? So 2, 3, 4. Okay. So now let's say I want even numbers from 2 till 10, right? So what can I do? Well, we start at 2. We want till 10, we can put 11, right? And then we put step. What is the step? 2. We have even numbers from 2 to 10, right? Because the step is 2. If I remove this third argument, we will simply have every number from 2 till 10, right? So is that clear how range works? So as you decrease the arguments, it goes in the order that it will first think that you have put the second argument only if you put one argument. Then it will think you've put the first two arguments if you put two arguments, and if you put all three, then it will think you have all three, right? Will it work without the plus? Which plus? Sorry. Okay, so what if you want to print only odd numbers? Yeah, you can do that. So you can simply just start with 3 and still make the step 2, right? Because the difference between odd numbers is still 2, right? So let's say we want from 3 till 11, right? So we put 3, 12, 2. It will give us 3 till 11, right? Okay. So let's go back to presentation. All right. So now there are more iterable functions. I will allow you to go to W3 schools and try to discover and try to use some of these yourself. Okay. They will have lots of examples for you to try these codes out yourself. So I highly recommend that. So now we have the break statement. So we're kind of low on time. Let me just quickly check how much we're left with. Okay, we can finish this off in 10 minutes. So let me just take an extra 10 minutes from you guys, if that's okay. All right, let me start sharing here. Okay. All right, so first we have the break statement. What this does is if inside a loop, for some reason you want to just break out of the break statement no matter what, then you can use the break keyword. Okay, so let's look at an example. So let's say I just really hate the number 13. So when I'm looping from 1 to 20, in case 13 comes up, I just want to just stop right away, right? Let's just say that's kind of my problem here. So what I'll do is first I'll create a loop from 1 till 20, right? So for I in range 20. So this gives us, sorry, 0 to 19, this will give us, right? So we make it 21, and the first can be 1. So this will give us 1 to 20, right? If you want to check, you can check. So let's make it right now. So this will give us 1 to 20, right? So now I said I want to break if I is 13, right? I really dislike 13, so I just do this and then print, and then I can just write break. Okay. Oh, this is kept. Okay. So now what will happen is, oh, we check equality by putting 2 equal signs. Okay. So as you can see, as soon as it printed 13, it checked, is it 13? Then it saw the break statement, if it is 13, and then it was like, okay, I'm not going to complete the loop. I am exiting out of here. So it just completely just ignores what is going on in the loop and just comes out. Okay. Does that make sense? Why it ended this loop early? So the break keyword will do this like whenever you do it. So the reason I won't put it directly outside in the loop is because if I try to do that, let's say I just put a break over here. So what this will do is it will simply end the loop as soon as it occurs the first time, right? The first time it will print I, and then it will simply just exit the loop. So if I print this, right? So it'll print 1 and then it just exited. Okay. So that's why it's kind of useless if you use it like this. You would rather just print 1, right? But yeah, this is how break works. So similarly, we have continue. So what does the continue statement do? Let's see. So what the continue statement does is it will tell the loop that, oh, go back up right now before even going further, right? So let's say in now I dislike 13, but now I don't dislike it that much. What I want to do is I just want to skip it, right? I want to skip 13 and I want to print everything else from 1 to 20, right? So let's create the loop again. So I have 1 to 21, right? And we print it again. There we have our code, but 13's here again. I just don't like it, right? So what we're gonna do is we will check if it is there, right? If I equals 13, continue. So what this will do is it will say go back up the loop immediately if it is 13, right? So if I run this, as you can see now we have 12 and then we have 14. So continue will skip whatever is left inside that inside the loop, and it will tell it to start the next loop immediately instead of finishing it off. Okay. So that should conclude today's lecture. Let's go back to the presentation. All right, so these are additional resources. As you can see, my colleague agreed with me and wanted you to learn from W3 schools as well. So W3 schools, highly recommended. I would say that should be your go-to resource for anything related to coding at the beginner level, at least. Okay. What if you want to skip more numbers like 13, 14, 15? Good question. Let's go back. So there's two things we can do. One thing we can do is we learned about else if, right? elif, right? So we can just use that and then write continue again. And let's say I want to skip 15 as well, right? So now this will skip all three, right? 13, 14, 15. So after 12, we have 16, right? Another thing you can do here is you can use the or keyword, right? So you can do or I is equal to 14 or I is equal to 15, right? So this does the same thing. Make sense? Okay, so that concludes today's lecture. If you don't have any questions, feel free to leave. I'm going to stop recording.